You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans! Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and I'm just going to get right into it. We all know what I'm going to start with. There's nothing else that comes even close. And that is the tragic, and I mean absolutely tragic death of one of the best players in NBA history, Kobe Bryant. To attempt to use an adjective to describe how great he was would be doing him a disservice. There is no singular adjective. Dominant isn't the right word. Elite isn't the right word. Transcendent isn't the right word. He is, without question, one of the 10 best players to ever, and I mean ever, score a point in the NBA. I actually have him on my list, and I have a complete list of this from 100 to 1. I have him third. My Mount Rushmore is LeBron 4, Kobe 3, Kareem 2, and MJ 1. The list of his accomplishments runs a mile long. If you wanted to recite them all off the top of your head, you couldn't. You'd miss one. This is a guy who loved, and I mean absolutely loved, the game of basketball. And we all know that he was born into an NBA family. His father obviously was Joe Jellybean Bryant, who was a very good player in his own right. But, man alive, did he produce one hell of a son. Kobe was incredible. And that doesn't even seem like the right word. This is a guy who was the first guard to ever enter the NBA straight out of high school. And there were a lot of people that were hesitant to take him. They did not think that he'd be able to make it in the NBA, skipping college altogether. They thought he'd flame out. John Calipari, famously, for the New Jersey Nets, took Kerry Kittles over Kobe Bryant. And if you want to look at that draft, you will see a lot of really bad players taken before Kobe. Before I get too far into his career, I want to tell you where I was and how my day and night went yesterday. I was playing, ironically enough, 2K. And I get a text from a friend of mine, Brandon. And he texts me, "Did you see the news?" Now, I'm off Twitter. I'm just focusing on my Xbox. I was playing as the Sacramento Kings, trying to get him an NBA title. Ironically, something that Kobe stopped on numerous occasions. But I'll get into that. I said no. And immediately after that, I went onto Twitter and I saw the news. Now, it was originally reported as an unconfirmed report. It was originally by TMZ, Of all people, TMZ broke the story. And, hey, give TMZ credit for being on this before anyone. They were on the helicopter crash before anyone. They were on the fact that Kobe was on the helicopter before anyone. They were on the fact that his daughter was on the helicopter with him before anyone. In the press conference that the sheriff gave, he criticized, or maybe it was the coroner, whoever, medical examiner, whatever, I don't think it was the coroner, criticized TMZ for not giving the families a chance to grieve. They wanted the bodies to be positively identified before anything was reported. No. Sorry, when it's Kobe Bryant, that's news. This is equivalent to Michael Jackson dying. You don't get to dictate how that news is released. So immediately, I scream at the top of my lungs, "Oh my God." And my parents turn to me. What? Kobe Bryant just died in a helicopter crash. No one believed it. My mom asked Alexa if Kobe Bryant was still alive, and obviously Alexa said yes. There's no way that it would be updated that fast. But then suddenly a bunch of other outlets picked it up, and this wasn't TMZ making up a story. No, this was real. And immediately I texted Brandon back, yeah, I saw the news. I texted a bunch of other people. My phone blew up after this. A bunch of my friends were texting me. They couldn't believe it. Whenever something like this happens, you need to reach out to someone close to you to provide a sense of comfort. Obviously, they didn't know Kobe personally, but even if you're just a casual NBA fan, you loved watching him play. And his death affected everyone, from the diehard Lakers fan who went to every game, all the way down to the person who only watches the Lakers when they're in the NBA Finals. Or no, let me rephrase. Only watches the NBA Finals. Forget if the Lakers are in it or not. This isn't a Lakers death. This is an NBA death. No, it's more than that. It's an American death. This is a death that transcends sports. The Grammys did a tribute to him. The Royal Rumble did a tribute to him. President Obama tweeted out something about him, as did President Trump and President Clinton. It's not too often that you can see Donald Trump, Barack Obama, and Bill Clinton share the same view, but that was Kobe. Everyone, and I mean everyone, respected him. Now, you can dislike him as a player. That's perfectly fine. I remember watching Kobe and Shaq destroy the Nets in the 2002 NBA Finals. But you had to respect him. I've been going on tangents here. I want to stick to what I did yesterday. It's just hard to process this. Even about 24 hours later, I still can't believe that he's gone. Life is so precious, man. I'm telling you. I texted a couple friends of mine that tell the people that you love them. Don't take it for granted. Never go to bed angry. Always leave on a positive note, because you never know if you're going to see that person again. always, and I mean always, let the people who you care about know that you care about them. Never, ever take it for granted. After the news initially hit, I turned on Fox News. And this was a little before 3. So, the news had just broke. Like, literally just broke. And obviously a station like Fox News or CNN, MSNBC, whatever, is going to wait to report it. You know, they don't want to come off looking like idiots in that respect. But then, whoever the anchor was announced the news that Kobe had died, and she was interviewing Jim Gray at the bottom of the 2 o'clock hour, at the top of the 3 o'clock hour. Gray was interviewed again. I did not realize that Jim Gray and Kobe were so close. But I gotta tell you, Jim Gray did a really, really good job of putting his death into perspective. The people who watch Fox News regularly are not huge NBA fans. They may like the NBA, they may watch the games, but they are not huge NBA fans. I thought Jim Gray did an excellent job of putting his death into perspective. And then as we were watching Fox News, my grandmother had come out at this point. My mom asked my father, "Do you have a Kobe Bryant autograph?" And he said no. I then went into my room and checked if I did, and I didn't. I then went on a sports memorabilia website and spent over $400 on an autographed jersey card of his. And you know what? I do not regret that for a second. Not at all. You always thought there was time to get that autograph. Well, he's not going to be signing anymore. And it was funny. After my father asked me how much it was, and I said it was $400. After tax, it was $450. And this was like 5 minutes after I purchased it. My father said to me, "All right, Jacob, if you really want it, you can buy it." I turned to him and I said, "Yeah, Dad, I'm way ahead of you. I already bought it." So that's just to inject a little humor into what is a terrible, terrible situation. Feels like an understatement. That night, we went out to eat at a Mexican restaurant. And on the way to the restaurant, we had Sirius XM NBA radio on. And they did a very good job talking about Kobe also. One thing that I do want to point out is all the anchors out there, and I'll give a special shout out to Joe Tessitore and Booger McFarland, but all the talk show hosts who happened to be on that day, all the news anchors who happened to be on that day, they were not expecting this at all, and they immediately had to pivot. And I give those people a lot of credit for staying with it and doing it right. I didn't hear any reports of this person did a bad job or this person didn't know what he or she was talking about. So good on the networks. Tessitore and McFarland, the most maligned broadcasting duo there is right now, had to broadcast the Pro Bowl under this specter. And I thought they did a very good job of it. I was not watching the Pro Bowl, but from the little bits I heard or saw of them on Twitter, they did a really good job. If that's their last game together, that's a hell of a way to go out. That night when we got home, I played a Kobe Bryant parody song numerous times. It's a parody of somebody that I used to know, all about Kobe Bryant. If you want to listen to it, it's... all you have to do is go on YouTube and search Kobye. It's really easy to find. And then I watched Dear Basketball, and then I went to bed. We all know that Kobe was drafted by the Charlotte Hornets, and he was traded for Vlade Divac in what is the worst trade in NBA history. The Lakers built a dynasty based off just that trade because, we can argue about whether Kobe would have won those first 3 titles without Shaq, but the reason that the Lakers traded Divac was because they wanted to throw a bunch of money at Shaq. So the Kobe trade is indirectly responsible for Shaquille O'Neal becoming a Laker. Immediately, you could tell that this guy was something special. He started off actually coming off the bench, if you can believe it. He was coming off the bench for Eddie Jones. All due respect to Eddie Jones, he had a very good career in his own right, but he just wasn't the type of player that Kobe was. Kobe never should have been coming off the bench for Eddie Jones. And Del Harris really misused him early on. Look, Del Harris has had a distinguished career. He's been in the NBA for a long time, but he just was not a good head coach. And it is no coincidence that the second that Phil Jackson replaced him, that the Lakers' fortunes changed. The triangle offense with Kobe, Shaq, and Derek Fisher is one of the best offenses in NBA history. It is often imitated, but it will never, and I mean never, be duplicated. Remember when Derek Fisher was head coach of the Knicks and they tried to install the triangle? It didn't work. You know why? Because they didn't have the players for it. Kobe and Shaq were the perfect, and I mean perfect, players for the triangle. And whether it was Derek Fisher, Rick Fox, Karl Malone, Gary Payton, whoever was the third guy in that triangle, it was done to perfection in LA. It led the Lakers to 3 straight NBA championships. Something that very, very, very few teams have done. LeBron's Heat didn't do it. The Golden State Warriors with Stephen Durant didn't do it. Shaq and Kobe did. Kobe and Shaq did, however you want to say it. And I remember the 2002 NBA Finals. Kobe coming alive in the fourth quarter and killing the Nets game after game after game. It was in that NBA Finals that he cemented himself as one of the clutchest players in NBA history. There are very few players that you want taking a shot with your team down by 1 final seconds before Kobe Bryant. The man had ice in his veins. Of course, after the three-peat, the feud with Shaq reached a boiling point. Phil Jackson didn't help matters with that book that he published. And even though the Lakers brought in Karl Malone and Gary Payton, they were upset by an inferior Detroit Pistons team. Now, all due respect to that Pistons team, they were a good team, but they were not as good as the Lakers. If the Lakers had their heads on straight in that series, they win that series decisively. But the locker room turmoil was just so much that the Lakers couldn't overcome it. After that, the Lakers really became Kobe's team. Phil Jackson left, was replaced with Rudy Tomjanovich, and Shaq was traded. The 04-05 season was the best thing that could have ever happened to Kobe Bryant, because he didn't experience success in his prime. It's the only season when he was in his prime that the Lakers did not make the playoffs. And he didn't like that. He was able to put his differences with Phil Jackson aside, and they led the Lakers back into the playoffs. Now, granted, it took them a while to reach the mountaintop again, but after the trade for Pau Gasol, they won 2 NBA titles. It is very difficult to take a break from playoff success like that and then reach the mountaintop again and stay there. After the 04-05 season, it took the Lakers a couple years to really get going. They were eliminated in the first round of the NBA playoffs in back-to-back years. That had never happened before to the Lakers under Kobe. And let me tell you, those teams were not that good. With all due respect to guys like Chris Mim and Lamar Odom and Smush Parker, they cannot be the second and third best players on championship winning teams, and neither can Luke Walton. But then the Lakers were able to rejigger themselves. They pulled off the blockbuster Gasol trade. They made it back to the NBA Finals. They lost to the Celtics, but then they went back to the NBA Finals and beat the Magic and beat the Celtics. It is so hard to take a break from winning and then come back. Because you're older, you're not as explosive as you were, and usually you get figured out. But Kobe was able to reinvent his game. He wasn't as me-centric as he was under Shaq. He got Gasol involved, and Pau Gasol is not remembered as fondly as he should be when we think about best NBA players. Gasol was the second best player on 2 championship winning teams. That does mean something. He wouldn't have had that success without Kobe, though. Kobe reinvented his game to better suit Gasol and Bynum. And because of that, the Lakers won the 2009 and 2010 NBA Finals. After that, though, it was really all downhill for the Lakers. Kobe got hurt a lot, and they just were never able to recapture the glory days. They tried with Nash and Howard, but it didn't work. Dwight Howard was almost murdered by Kobe Bryant on numerous occasions. And he probably stuck around a little too long, but you know what? That just speaks to his love of the game. There are very few players that love basketball as much as Kobe Bryant did. You've got LeBron James, Michael Jordan, and Kobe Bryant. Put him in any order you want in terms of love of the game. And you can't go wrong. He was so serious about the game of basketball that with Chris Rock and David Spade sitting next to him during a game, Rock is trying to tell jokes to make Kobe laugh, and Kobe has a 1,000-yard stare on him. He didn't hear one of the funniest people on earth cracking jokes in his ear because he was so into the game. I mean, for God's sake, the guy didn't flinch when a ball was almost passed right into his face on an inbounds. He was unreal. 81 points in a game against the Raptors where he torched Jalen Rose. Unreal. Even though he was taking incredibly difficult shots, it always looked effortless. That Jordan-esque fadeaway that he had is an incredibly difficult shot. Try it in the rec center. Try doing that at your local YMCA while screaming Kobe. Like a million people do. I guarantee you, you won't hit it. It's an incredibly difficult shot that Kobe made look effortless on every single night. He is probably the best penetrator in NBA history. He would start out on the perimeter, and then he would drive to the hoop better than anyone. He did not have a great three-point shot, but he made up for it with his slashing. If you combine Dwayne Wade and Derrick Rose in his prime, maybe, just maybe, you get Kobe. And to add to that, he was doubled on every play, it seemed like. Watch old Lakers games and count how many times he's double-teamed, triple-teamed, quadruple-teamed, whatever. And he was still putting up 30 a night. I think the best way that I can sum up how much Kobe meant is this way. When the Los Angeles Rams traded for the first overall pick to pick Jared Goff, it was actually agreed to the day or night before the trade was officially announced. The trade was actually agreed to on April 13th, 2016. You know what happened on that day? It was Kobe's last game. The LA Rams and Tennessee Titans waited to announce the trade out of respect for Kobe Bryant. It may not seem like a lot, but that just doesn't happen. Alright, at the end of the day, waiting another day, it really doesn't matter, but just think about that for a second. This guy's greatness transcended sports so much that a trade for the first overall pick in the NFL draft was delayed. And there was no better way for Kobe's career to have ended than by putting up 60 points, outscoring the entire Jazz team 23-21 in the fourth quarter, and leading the Lakers to a 101-96 victory. A perfect end to as close to a perfect career as we will ever see in sports. May he rest in peace. There are a few other stories that I want to talk about today, but it feels weird to talk about sports stories that aren't Kobe Bryant. It's just really, really bizarre to me. But these stories are important. It's 1 basketball and 2 baseball. And I'll start with the basketball story because it's just too apropos for me not to. The basketball story is the Willie Cauley-Stein trade, and I think it's a great trade for the Mavericks. With the Dwight Powell injury, they need a guy who can step in and do what Powell did. And Willie Cauley-Stein is a guy that can get you 10 points and 7 rebounds a night. That's actually more than what Powell can do. Cauley-Stein is a better player than Dwight Powell. The Mavericks are making a legitimate playoff run here. They're not a title threat by any stretch, but they're going to be a tough out in the playoffs. With the way Doncic is playing, if Porzingis stays healthy, which I know is a big if, but if he stays healthy, they have one of the best coaches in the NBA in Rick Carlisle. They're going to be a tough team to get out in the playoffs. As for the Warriors, I know why they did it. They kind of have to sell off all their expiring contracts because this year has gone so south for them. But the second round pick doesn't come close to being as impactful as Cauley-Stein is. I don't hate the trade for the Warriors, but I love it for the Mavericks, so they win it. The first baseball story that I want to talk about concerns Trevor Story. No pun intended. He got a 2-year contract from the Rockies for $27.5 million. This contract does not buy out any of his free agent years. This is just for his remaining arbitration years. From that end, it makes perfect sense for Story. He gets some cost certainty. He's guaranteed a pretty hefty raise on the $5 million that he was making last year, and man alive, does he deserve it. I remember his rookie year, 2016, I had the opportunity to pick him up in fantasy baseball. I didn't, because I thought he'd come back down to earth. He didn't. He has emerged as one of the best players in baseball. I don't care that he's playing at Coors Field. He is a dominant player. And when you look at this from the Rockies' end, this makes no sense to me. Why would you agree to this contract when it doesn't buy out any of his free agent years? Why wouldn't you just take the chance in arbitration? Why are you locking yourself into him being a free agent when he's supposed to? If you go through the arbitration process a couple times, usually the player will be more inclined to sign an extension. It's what happened with Jacob deGrom. The only thing that I can think of from the Rockies' end is that it shows that they're going to negotiate in good faith with Story, and this is a handshake deal. Agree to this and we'll pay you handsomely when you're about to hit free agency. If it's that, then it makes sense, but otherwise, I'm not a fan of this, especially with the Nolan Arenado trade rumors picking up steam. Man, I'll tell you, could you imagine him on the Yankees? Yeah, Urshela, Andujar, Frazier, and Garcia for Arenado. Yankees fans would do it. Hell, if the Yankees do that, forget a World Series win. They're looking at the wins record. They're going to be looking to get 150 wins. Oh, man. The second baseball story that I want to talk about is the Reds locking up Nick Castellanos for 4 years at $64 million. I think this is a fantastic move for the Reds. I understand that their outfield is now clogged, but take a look at the kind of player Castellanos is. This is a guy who's good for 25 homers and a 270 to 290 average every year. He's one of the most underrated players in baseball. The only reason that you haven't heard of him is because he spent most of his career with the Tigers. He was traded to the Cubs at the deadline last year, and now they have to see him go to an up-and-coming threat of theirs in the NL Central. Here's what the Reds are going to do, and this is why I love this move for them. They're going to put Castellanos in left, Shogo Akiyama in center, and Aristides Aquino in right. Now you're probably asking yourself, where does that leave Nick Senzel? Nick Senzel is going to be traded to the Cleveland Indians as part of a deal to get Francisco Lindor. That is exactly what the Reds are going to do here. They have a glaring hole at shortstop. Freddie Galvis is good. He's very good, as a matter of fact, but he's not being paid a lot of money. And that lineup would look a lot better with Lindor in it. They're making a legitimate playoff run here. The way that lineup currently is, and the way that rotation currently is, I don't know if they're better than the Brewers, Cardinals, and Cubs. If they add Lindor to that lineup, they're instantly the division favorites. That's the only way that this signing makes sense. If they trade Senzel for Lindor, this signing makes a ton of sense. Otherwise, you've just blocked one of the most exciting young guns in baseball. Tomorrow, the Jacob Valk Show will feature happier topics. You'll get a Brooklyn Nets show later tonight. Good God Almighty, do I have some things to say about this team. Until then, I am Jacob Valk saying that you can't ask Mr. Ed to keep up with Secretariat.